Welcome to the show, Sergey. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, Guru.
Perfect. So do you want to start with a quick introduction, who you are, what you do?
All right, sure. So my name is Serghei Glinca. I'm co-founder of CrystalsFirst, a company that is focused on protein crystals, as the company name says. And we have a special technology. What I would say, for the first time in history, we have a systematic process how to treat protein crystals. And protein crystals are super critical in structural biology, and structural biology is critical in drug discovery. So we offer the technology to support drug discovery programs, lead discovery programs in pharma and biotech.
Can you explain in layman terms what exactly you do with the crystals? You help to find the structure, 3D structures, or like what exactly is your offering?
Okay, so great question. We actually accelerate the whole process from a protein crystal to the 3D structure by a factor of 10. And this is possible because we have a critical technology that stabilizes protein crystals. So as I say often, it's hard to get crystals and it's hard to keep them. And when you are able to stabilize, it stabilizes the whole process. And we have also computational part that is automated and can process data, refine the structure. So the whole value chain from the crystal to the 3D model is kind of accelerated significantly.
Can you give some real example without sharing the name of the customer? Can you share, like, you received a request from one biotech customer, a pharma customer, and that's what they wanted you to do, and that was a deliverable. Do you want to share one of the case study?
Yeah. Okay. So I think there are two case studies that are of particular interest. There's one established protein target that is used for anti-infectives. And up to now, we have only one modality of many drugs that address only one side of the protein. And what we've done a crystallographic screen. So we screen directly on crystals. So we're not only determining the 3D structure, we screen fragments, so-called fragment-based drug discovery, directly on crystals. And they came with a question: can we identify new chemistry or new modalities for this established target where we see increasing resistance for existing drugs? So we've done the screening, and there were two aspects I would like to share. The first one is that our technology was able to stabilize the conformational space of the target and increase the quality. So if you deal with hundreds of crystals and hundreds of data sets, it's good to have good distribution so you have comparable data. So we've done that increased so we started with 3 angstrom and increased for some people who were working with structural biology or close to structural biology, we started with 3 angstrom, and most of the structures with hundreds, so we had hundreds of data sets diffracted below 2 angstrom. Right. So, and as a result of the whole undertaking, we identified a new site with one starting point of a compound that can become an inhibitor. You need kind of to design the compound further, but we delivered what we promised, a new modality or a starting point to develop a new modality of inhibition. So this would be one example. The other example is around one protein that is very interesting, actually, in itself, the story why we screen on protein crystals directly. Mm-hmm. So basically, the idea is, and I think this is kind of a larger story. So when you screen compounds in an assay or biophysical functional assay, the readout is often binary, yes or no. It's then right. You dig in deeper, and then you get the affinity, kinetics, etc. And we had this situation where one of our crystallographers said, I think we have a hit here. We have a compound. And I said, where? Right. And you don't ask in typical assays, where is it binding? And this is kind of the exciting part when we have a hit, which is defined by we see an electron density like near the protein on the protein surface. We ask the question, where? So the readout of a crystallographic screen, of course, is not only whether the binary, but where and how is it bound? Is it kind of which kind of interaction patterns? And in one screening, it was pretty exciting to see that the question where actually there was a protein, and not in the region of the active site, but on some regulatory sites, there were loops that were generally not resolved. Right. When we screened the fragment library, we identify one hit where you see that those regulatory loops are stabilized and they are resolved. So you have kind of resolved an additional structure of the protein that were previously in the apostructure not visible because it was not stabilized. So I think those two examples show that we follow a different type of paradigm. So crystals first means also X-ray first, structure first. And it's a funny story. It's a funny story because 4 years ago, we started with this idea, like a spin out of a group, university, scientists go out to the market, talk to the pharma companies, biotech companies, and say, listen, we should do drug discovery and start with structural biology directly. And they would say, no, that's not how the industry works. So I would say, of course, we know that it's not how the industry works, but the advantages are if you start with fragments and you have the structure, you have data, you can search virtual spaces, and then go with more sensitive, with larger compounds where the assays are more sensitive to larger compounds. So it was kind of skepticism, but like last year, there was this publication by Boehringer where they kind of say X-ray first, which is crystals first. And I think that's funny. It's probably what every small company experiences when you have innovative approach or technology, that you kind of get this discussion. That's not the status quo. You have something different. But when you stay in the game and when you are persistent, then you'll see that you're kind of ahead of the curve. And like when other companies or larger companies, established companies begin to either adopt or do similar stuff, you have a competitive advantage. That's what we experience at the moment. People are more aware that structural data is critical.
Right. So help me understand at what stage your services come into the picture. Is it early stage like target identification, or during early drug screening stage, or hit to lead identification? So like what stages you are playing role here, and why your approach is better than alternative approach?
So we are more in the hit ID lead optimization, maybe if you need structural data. So more hit ID, hit to lead stages. And the difference is that, so established screening techniques, phenotypic screenings, biophysical screenings, and we apply our technology, SmartSoc, in a fragment-based drug discovery paradigm. And structural data in fragment-based drug discovery is even more critical because computational methods are still not there to predict reliably where fragments bind. And this what makes our technology valuable. It's 10 times faster than established techniques. And what we also do is in virtual assessment of the project risk. So we wouldn't start a project if our internal risk assessment process has not green light. So we wouldn't spend the protein material, the time just to do things that probably won't work or won't work as well as we would like it to work.
Right. You said you have some proprietary technology. Do you want to elaborate that? Like what is it? Is like novel machinery, novel the processes, the way you are doing is unique, or it is just your skill set, your expertise from your background? So what is trade secret or patented here?
Yeah. So it's not a machine. It could become, maybe it will become a machine, but the way we treat crystals is completely different what is established. So
Got it.
The idea is that nobody would have expected that there are rules, there are kind of rules behind the stability of protein crystals, and our technology uncovers those rules, so you can selectively, for one specific protein crystal, have the kind of the rules that make it stable. So it's not cross-linking, stabilized in the native state. And this is what it makes so attractive for us for screening or co-structure determination.
Got it. So it's more like a process.
Yeah, it's similar, like a
process.
We have filed 3 patents, but the idea, when you uncover some rules, you can extend it to other phenomena. And
right.
This is also what we do internally.
That's very cool. I lived in Germany. What I realized is it's in the DNA of German ecosystem to create better rules and processes.
Yeah, that's absolutely, Corey, absolutely right. It's an obsession. I need to sometimes to slow down. It's the obsession of quality and streamlining processes. Sometimes it kills the creative process when you stick to this. We need this quality. We need to make it right. But it's true. When I talk to other like scientists from other cultures and countries, I see, okay, we are obsessed with protein crystal quality. This is what we need. We need great diffraction. And then what I've seen from other companies that operate in similar, do also structure biology, when we sometimes get the structures because we needed to work from clients, I see, that's not a good quality.
No, I think you're playing with your strengths. And what motivated you to start this company? Like, did you identify any huge gap, or you are passionate about something? What is your goal? Why did you start this company?
So, yeah, I think there are always 2 sides when you start something. And the first side was the professor, who I did also the PhD, Professor Klever, who is well known for structure-based drug design and developing tools around it. There was a experiment and what they observed in the lab. So I'm more the computational modeling guy. He observed it and said, okay, this is something special, right? It was like years ago. And from that, we developed the technology. So I think he realized there is a phenomenon that is uncommon, like it solves a problem in protein crystallography. So this is the technological gap. People overestimate this. Developing an observation into technology and business is kind of a lot of work, but you need this initial seed of the person that identifies the gap. And on this journey, when we developed it, you identify even more gaps, right? So one gap we identified, it's rather trivial, and people who do drug discovery, they know it. It's called empty structure. So one of our key jobs is actually to make sure that there are no empty structures. You want to see this compound in the protein pocket. You don't want to see an empty structure. So you identify those kind of things that are critical for communication. And the second, like it's a personal. I only realized after starting this entrepreneurial journey, I realized why I had troubles in my earlier life, because I wanted always to improve stuff. I wanted always to change stuff. I wanted to do things differently. And people mostly don't like change, don't like new ideas. So I kind of realized, okay, my playground is where things are evolving, where you can build new stuff, where people appreciate new solutions, where you solve problems. And you don't teach this at school. And fortunately also not, at least here, not at universities, that there's a different type of the game, more risky, but where you're more creative, or you have to be creative. So it turned out to be this way.
It makes sense. Starting a business is the best way to expand your playground,
Yeah.
So if you want to tinker more, I mean, as your business grows, even your options will be limited, right? But if you really want to try new things and create better versions of things, solve problems, I think starting a business is arguably the best way to do that.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more.
Like you said before we started, we had a discussion prior to that. You said it's one of the best ways to experience personal growth or personal limits, etc. And you said you would recommend it to everyone. I would say think about it twice because it's a really tough. If you want to do a good job in a competitive environment, it's really tough. You need to grow personally as fast as you can. Like it's not about yourself 1 year ago. You have to reinvent yourself. I mean, you hear it every time, but when you are in the process, it's okay. What is important to me? You have to deprioritize on a weekly basis, maybe on a daily
Right.
basis. It's kind of this constant flow, and getting used to it is probably kind of a muscle that you train.
You're right. You're right. You learn how to be comfortable in uncomfortable situation all the time.
Yeah, and switching
So,
between, like in business of science, you have to switch every time from, I do also business development, but I also do the science. I do also some hands-on computation modeling. And you have to switch between business, science, and connect. Like you have also be able to bridge it. So it cannot be like, this is a business, this is science, but building this connection is what creates them value in business of science.
You're right. And the thing is, you have to light up different parts of the brain to function in different domains, right? When you are doing a sales or business development, you are basically using different part of the brain. So it's very different behavior, very different mindset, right? So here in the sales, you are more like focusing on the promised land, the vision, right? In the science, you are more realistic in a way, more like something in the short distance. But in the business, you really think bigger, but it's very different mindset too. And then you combine both of these science and business guys together. It is tricky. It is, yeah, you have to work on it.
I like to connect science and business. So I like science, but what I also learned is that I like to bring this value to people who need it, to projects that need it, to companies where I see the fit. So like super exciting activity. I would have never expected that something like this would happen in life generally, that you'll find passion that you didn't know about.
Yeah, I think in this world, we do need more scientist entrepreneurs, because historically scientists focused on their science, salespeople helped with the commercialization. So there was always disconnect, right? But I think now we need scientists to really take the driving seat and drive things, because they have all the passion. They just have to train their mindset a little bit more in a different direction. But we need more scientist entrepreneur, because the problems we have are really big problems. Whether it's harnessing the power of immune system or microbiome, or whether fighting climate change. So we need scientists who can have more certainty, more authority, more power, and really driving things, not just working in the back end. So I think entrepreneurship in the scientific world is very much needed. We need more bio entrepreneurs, we need more scientist entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And I think we'll see a rise of these kind of entrepreneurs you're talking about. So there is the term of bilingual, like it's not that I speak English and Russian and German, like I speak 3 languages, but like knowing the science and knowing coding, like they call it bilingual. And I think what you're talking about is also a new generation of entrepreneurs that know the science, but understand, okay, the value of this of the products of the science, it can be brought by a company, and there are different mechanics. Like for example, one example, you cannot sell a product by a debate. But in science, like science without a debate is a weak science. And when I realized, it's not saying that scientists shouldn't sell, it's just the mechanics of a sales process is definitely not a debate. It's persuasion.
Exactly.
Right? And people who will connect this, that when I am in a scientific context, like I'm at a conference, it's not about sales, it's about presenting content and have a debate. But when you are kind of trying to show the value, to sell something, to persuade that your technology will bring value, it's not a debate.
Yeah, as you said, good science is all about debate. Good science is all about doubting things, challenging things,
Yeah.
and showing more uncertainty, because you cannot say anything with certainty. You need evidence enough from both sides, right, to make a claim. But business is all about certainty.
Yeah.
Unlike scientific world, you cannot say perhaps, maybe, probably.
Maybe we can deliver.
Yeah, you cannot say that. You say, yeah, you need the service, we can do that. But if
Yes.
you speak in the scientific word, you would probably say, yeah, I mean, potentially this can
But
happen, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
like
yeah,
you
yeah,
will
yeah.
use more uncertain words. So it's a totally different game. So even I struggle with
Exactly.
that when sometimes I work with the engineers and help them create new features. And so we always doubt, we challenge. But when I talk to our customers, I cannot explain the worst case scenario too. I
Hmm.
obviously have to focus on the best case scenario,
Yeah.
because
And make it happen. Yeah.
and make it happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So in scientific world, you are not very ambitious in a way, right? So when you're a business guy, you are, I mean, there's ambition in different way, but
Exactly. That's the point. The ambition is in a different way. So in science, you have to uncover something unknown or
right,
do something undone. Like, and
right,
this requires a lot of doubting what is known. But in business, you kind of leverage the known. Like, I
right,
know we'll make it happen. We've done it 20, 30, 50 times. We'll make it for you even better because we have this experience. And in science, we say, okay, we have this context. What, but we don't understand this aspect. How can we understand it better? Right.
right,
And,
right.
but it's a different game. That's true. Different rules, different game. But connecting this is what this new type of entrepreneurs will, they need to excel in this bridging both worlds.
Totally right. Totally right. I think currently, like half of America, if not half of the world, they are divided about climate change. So I think this is because our scientists are not certain enough. Our scientists are not persuasive enough, right? So we need more vocal, more certain scientists who can explain the science in layman terms with
Mm,
authority. So I do think there are
yeah.
many things like in genetic, for example, GMOs, genetic modification. Now there are
Mhm.
so many perception. People think it can do this, it can do that. Vaccine, there are so many doubts. I think this is a job of us scientists to really tell the world what exactly it means, and what are the potential downsides, and what are the
Mm,
impact and benefits outweigh in most cases the potential disadvantages. So I think we need more leaders and like
yeah.
more scientist leaders.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I think it was 2 years when I asked myself, who is else, at least in Germany, playing the, like, building scientific companies like drug discovery. So I'm not talking about big pharma. So I started researching and I identified super strong, talented personalities, but they are not visible. They're not
Right,
visible on social media. They don't do podcasting like we do. They don't do videos. And I think that needs to be changed, that this exposure will kind of have an impact, that the information that they can present, I mean, they can talk about science in a way that people understand the complexity behind it. But this is, I also wrote a couple of blog posts that I say we have in Germany, where I live, a strong life science community, but kind of the exposure of those people
right,
is not there. They are rather in their office, humble, which is all right. But if you see the need that we need to communicate, where do we have gaps in understanding the world, right? You need
right,
to speak up. You need to speak up to close the gap so people can understand the world better. Because, I mean, we are biological
right.
systems, right? And there is fear, there is creativity, etc. So I think for scientists, they are best equipped to understand also human nature.
Yeah, I mean, one can argue that, yeah, but I agree with you. So yeah, I think especially when you have access to so many sophisticated information, it is your job to really make it digestible, make it understandable to rest of the world. So like you are the expert of crystallography. Now you want to tell people, hey, why structure-based approach is better and why we do it better compared to your competitors. So I think this is our job to do it better. Yeah.
So I think you're asking the same question, but I can answer it in this different way. So starting in hit identification phase, so starting the campaign, this is our philosophy. Like if you start a campaign directly on crystals, the output is structural data. And if you consider the existing technologies today, you can actually take this structure with your, like we're assuming it's a fragment, and you can screen billions of virtual molecules. They can be synthesized by chemistry providers within a short period of time, like the large chemistry providers. And like this iteration, like virtual iteration, you do selection 1 week, you do this virtual, you select, then the company synthesizes it, and it takes 3 to 4 weeks. So imagine what is happening. You start with a crystallographic screen, you have structural data, you already validate your compound.
Right.
So you don't need to validate in several assays, you see the binding, right? And you see the interaction. And then let's say our timelines are very competitive. Let's say for a good reproducible crystallization protocol, 2 months. And then you have this virtual exploration. Imagine what is happening. Within 3 months, 3 to 4 months, you have structural data, you explore billions of molecules of combinations as a follow-up strategy for your hits using structure. So it's not kind of, I have some affinity, I do similarity search. You do like structure-based drug design in a virtual space of billions of molecules. I mean, this is such an opportunity. And like, I know that pharma companies are creating those huge chemical spaces to explore them, but it's this structure is that it kind of navigates through the chemical space that tells you, okay, these interactions are conserved, and the compounds should be similar to that. So you don't lose this critical affinity or interaction. So within several months, you explore structure-guided, data-driven billions of molecules. I mean, when I did my PhD, it was like 10 years ago. It sounds like fantasy, but today it's tangible.
Right. So how much of your work is in silico and how much is it in the wet lab?
So the process from the crystal to data collection on a synchrotron is wet lab. And then from that, you have computational crystallography. You do data processing, refinement, and then with the refined data, you do again in silico. When you select the compound, you go into the wet lab and synthesize compound. But what we also do, I can also emphasize again, what unfortunately many companies don't do, a virtual assessment before they do crystallography. Like to reduce the risk, sometimes I even don't accept projects because I say this won't work. And I explain also in discussions why previous projects were not working. It was kind of a waste of time, money, and resources.
Right.
Like modeling. Yeah.
Do you want to tell what do you mean by virtual assessment? So when you receive a new request from your customer for crystallography work, to de-risk the whole process, you do virtual assessment. So what exactly it entails?
So let's put it this way. So every crystal is unique in its stability and also how it's packed. And this packing analysis is something you could do qualitatively, right? But you can also quantify things. I cannot go deeper, but like quantification of the crystal metrics and also quantification of your compounds. This modeling reduces a lot of risk.
Right. No, that sounds great. And coming back to what we were talking about, entrepreneurship and how important it is, I think it was a great segue to ask you, what advice would you give to aspiring bio entrepreneurs or other entrepreneurs in early stages of their business? What have you learned that you think they all should know and people are not talking about it?
That's a good question, especially the last part. The parts people are not actually talking about is that there are not many spots on Earth where you have oversupply of funds, right? And you have a high demand for ideas, for technologies. And this story, many entrepreneurs are hearing, and they assume that it's also true for where they are from, but it's not true. Like, there is some kind of exclusivity for funds. If you are in a somewhat hub, then the likelihood that you get funding is better. And in life science, funds are important, right? So it's not just a laptop. You could be a tech company, but you need resources, infrastructure, material, machines, etc. So I would advise, if you have like the option to move to this spot, move there, because you will evolve as a company much faster.
So you're saying like biohubs, like AstraZeneca biohub, like these type of things?
Those, because you need those resources for the company to evolve. And if you have access, so it's designed for access. Often it's designed so you can access something. It will kind of support the evolution of the company. So this is something people don't really talk about. And then also the same is true for funding. But on a general, if you have an idea and you really want to make it happen, just go for it. We make it happen not in a hub. I kind of sometimes reflect, and it's actually a funny story. So like 4 years ago, we did this pitch competition, and we were super excited. It's early stage, and said, okay, we're gonna change the way things are happening here and there. And like we pitched, there was a pharma company also, but we didn't win. Right? So I was devastated. What happened here? Like, we are driven by changing the industry, etc. And we asked one of the judges, what happened here? And he said, oh man, you're visionary. You have so much potential. You should go to Silicon Valley. Like, we are in Germany. We invest in products, right? Like small products. And the first prize went to some kitchen tool. And then years later, I said, oh, that was probably good advice to move somewhere else. But now we have built our plan here and have the network. So things are working out well. But I think it's a funny story. If you want to make it happen where the culture and the infrastructure will support your company. If you can afford, sometimes you have personal bondings. If you can afford to move somewhere, go for it.
So that's a very good point. So what I want to understand, how is the biotech market in Germany? And how is it different from North American market from your experience? Like starting a company in Germany, biotech company, CRO, starting a company in North America, like based on your learning so far, what differences you see in these two markets, funding sources, struggles, and how you scale the company, access to talent?
Yeah, I cannot compare how companies grow in the States, but what I observed is that in general, like company building skills and approach is much stronger in the States. So I describe it as that if like in the States you have when I interact with talk to people, there's kind of a feeling of a mission, right? And very pragmatic. What we have in Europe is in Germany especially, you have this risk aversion in terms of we need to sort out all of the risks and then go for it. And this is not how companies are built. You just go for it, and when you identify something, you just figure out and move on. But this in Germany, it's more like create first a model that is going to work. It will take a lot of time, and if you de-risk your model, then you go in the market, which is probably a bad idea because your model is only theoretical.
Right.
So those are the big differences. And what I also appreciate in interaction with American colleagues and companies is this openness to new ideas. Also in UK, it was like a discussion. This is our plan. This is our technology. Oh, tell me more. Super exciting. Just want to learn. In Germany, people tend to, okay, is it actually working? Of course it's working. Okay, so there's also a sense of doubt. I had even a presentation in Switzerland, And there was this person from pharma, and I was saying, okay, this is our data. This is what our data says. Like, and this, it's not possible. And I say, okay, I'm not talking about possible, impossible. This is what our data says. It's just numbers derived from the technology. Say, this is not possible. Okay, it's not even a debate, right? It's kind of rejection of data.
Right.
So
I think it's
you face a lot of this attitude, which is not productive for entrepreneurship.
You're right. After living 2 years in Germany, I noticed that there's not so much openness to be ready to fail, right? So people, they are too afraid to fail. They want to do everything in a perfect possible way, following all the SOP protocols. So they follow SOPs really well. I really learned that in Germany, how to follow rules. I always struggle with that. But like, you cannot innovate if you are not ready to fail.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So every time you try something new, you don't know it's gonna work because you are the first one doing that. In many cases, if you're really an innovator, we all have different strengths, weaknesses in different area, different cultures. So I thought in Germany, people were very risk averse. And I wonder if it is because the source of funding, because many startups are funded by big corporates, like big, massive companies. So they inherit their DNA. Unlike US or even in Canada, if it is VC backed, I mean, you have arguably more control to play and innovate and fail, try different things. So I wonder if it is because how companies are funded, because many startups in Germany, what I notice is are funded by big established 200-year-old companies, 300-year-old companies. So I wonder if they inherit that DNA unconsciously.
That's actually a question. I thought about it, like what could be the reason, but I don't think about it anymore because I have a narrative created for myself that I also speak openly about, which is if you don't act or do the right thing to solve global problems, then you are irresponsible. There are probably tons of reasons for that behavior, cultural, corporates, where the money from, where money goes, etc. I think Germany is a great country to scale. I think for scaling, it's a great country. If there are climate change, like another anecdote, what happened to me is, for example, there was a presentation of algae. It was an academic group. They created a strain of algae that can secrete the antibodies direct in the environment. So you don't have to destroy cells, so they can secrete it again and again. And I was kind of, wow, this is great for production of antibodies because it's expensive, it's difficult to standardize. I said, have you thought about patenting and then building a company? And I was lucky I was not hit physically because people were so angry at me. They were so angry, like, what do you think? This is science. I know this is science, but listen, there are so many people, I've seen those people that don't get medication because production is too expensive. Right. And they don't access to medicines because it's expensive. And I mean, this was kind of, for me, critical. We need to change this culture. People think inside the box and it's a science, but the impact of especially this technology could be like beneficial for health. Right. And it's maybe a cultural thing, but what I actually want to say is that being responsible, right? So there is a gap, like medication, like therapeutics are too expensive. If you can increase, the thing is, if you decrease the price, the profit margin, the companies are not incentivized to innovate. It's kind of this vicious cycle. But if you say we create new technologies that have less costly production, or the production costs are less, then you have the potential to reach more patients, heal more, or like create therapies for more people. So this kind of thinking, I think this is important because you close the loop with, it's not about technology, it's about like people, reaching out to people.
Right. Right. I couldn't agree more. I think we need global urgency for big problems. Like there are over 10,000 diseases desperately
Yeah.
need cures. Like we struggled with COVID, it became a global urgency. We have a vaccine boom. So if we have that same level of urgency for all the remaining over 10,000 diseases, I won't be surprised if we come up with cures and treatments for all these diseases in the next decade or so. But I think we do need this as a global urgency, as we have to really act on it on an urgent basis. It's not like
Mhm.
you make incremental changes and improvements. We need more transformational changes. And it will only happen if we accept there's problem, we have very ambitious deadline, and try to cure all the diseases and only work on maybe human enhancement. So pharmaceuticals and biotech are working more on enhancing product rather than life-saving products, if you know
Yeah.
what I mean. So
Mhm.
I would love to see the industry moving towards that mindset. So it's not just about treating and making incremental changes, more about eliminating all these diseases, as many as possible, because every year we can have new diseases too, right? We discover
Mhm.
new diseases, but all the major diseases, we should have at least cures and treatments for all of these diseases, and we work on human enhancement. I think then we will do the real work. Currently, we are
Yeah.
still in survival mode, right? We need more, uh, we need to
Yeah,
work
that's
on
true.
human
It's
enhancement.
I think that's a great vision. And if you talk about like this, you need more, if- like you need a different. I'm not talking about the efficient process. You need a different process to develop those therapeutics because, like, if you do the math, like with existing technologies, it will happen like in thousands of years that we'll be able to treat more diseases than we are able to treat right now.
You're right. We need different model, different approaches. We have to really, I mean, change things upside down in many cases, right? We need that level of
Exactly.
innovation.
That's how innovation happens. Absolutely, Guru.
Right. So, Sergey, I want to be respectful for your time. So, I do want to talk a little bit about the biotech industry and the roles we have to play as the industry. So, first of all, what changes you see in the industry, and what do you think is the future of biotech? How do you think industry will evolve as a whole,
Hmm.
and how it is already, like, if you're seeing any trends, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So I think there are two main trends that I can observe from my biotech entrepreneur perspective. The first one is that there will be more networks of experts, like small companies, experts that come together and create with their expertise an exponential access to a technology or exponential value creation, like we bring a special chemistry, crystallography, maybe a screening in computational platform, and then within this expertise and specific focus, more value will be created. So I see that is already happening right now. And the second is what is hugely underestimated is the computational part.
Right.
So I'm fascinated about, for example, the infrastructure that Google Computing Cloud has. We work for specific projects on that, and you can create your system within 1 minute and then run whatever you want and then shut it down. And I think that infrastructure will create, it's not only the software, it's the
Right.
scale of the infrastructure that is now accessible, and you can not only play with it, but you can do calculations were not feasible like 5 years ago. And I think with all the data that is publicly available and also available inside like pharma and biotech companies, there will be a transformation. I believe that the new reality of biotech is hybrid. I think the new reality of biotech is hybrid, where you have lean setting of experiments to create data and then use this data in computational models, computational modeling, and then go back into experiments in a lean fashion, not on a broad, like high throughput screening, but do like on a very lean but very smart way. And I think this will is also already emerging. The number of AI tools is like it's exploding. And if you have free code to work, you will work on free code. You will apply it.
Right.
So
Right. I agree with you.
This fusion is already happening, and I think it will happen in a couple of years, like on a scale we cannot imagine at the moment.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I believe the magic will happen somewhere at the intersection of biology and computing. So you raised two great points. One you said is industry will move towards network approach. I believe in that. I'm focusing on that currently because it's a very capital intensive industry, right? So you cannot have 100 or 50,000 people company, mega company doing everything. It's very bureaucratic. There unnecessary inefficiency, return on research investment is like 1.3%. So what we need networks, like 1,000 companies working on one problem in collaborative networks without any friction. So we want to eliminate these friction points. So that's very important. Another thing that you said is leveraging historical data, right? If someone already tested similar drug on mouse model that recapitulates Alzheimer's disease condition, we can already leverage that data instead of running those experiments again. So I think if you want to speed up the process, we want to leverage historical data more. But currently, even the data is all over the place. We want to centralize it, structure it, make them more usable. So I think these two things will be the pillar of the biotech of the future. So I agree with that.
And imagine if both trends kind of converge in the future. You have this hybridization with data-driven approach, and you have specific networks. It can create a much bigger impact than just what we discussed.
You're right. You're right. I think magic will happen at the intersection of computing.
Hopefully.
No, it will happen. It's just a matter of time. Sergey, very insightful, fun talking to you. I really appreciate your time and hope to talk to you soon.
Okay. Thanks, Guru. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.